Hello, a big warm welcome to Maverick Mind. Thanks so much for being here and joining for me for this conversation, this episode today. And also a massive warm welcome to any of you guys that maybe are here joining us for the first time. Such a pleasure to connect with you. And I cannot wait, as always, to share this week's conversation with you. You guys, this week's conversation, this was a powerful one. I left or put down the Zoom on this guest and really felt shifted within myself. I think it was such a rich conversation, and this person demonstrated so much wisdom, so much savvy, creative entrepreneur spark, and above all, a huge amount of resilience to get to where she is. And I really think this conversation will help you through hard times. It will empower you through the easy times. It will be one of those conversations I really think that you'll come back to multiple times. And I really hope that it gives you some inspiration and drive to keep doing what you want to do and keep chasing your freedom. This week, I am joined by Brit Nicole. Brit is an award-winning photographer who has built and scaled a wedding photography business not once, but twice. And you find out why a bit later in the conversation. She has overcome some crashing lows and very dark times in her life and come out the other side with such drive, such ambition, such vision, and such wisdom to share with others. And I really think that her wisdom and what she says in this podcast and in this conversation will, as I say, encourage, inspire, empower you guys in so many different ways, depending on what your creative channel is. You'll get a lot out of this conversation. However, I never thought I'd have to do this on the podcast, but I am going to say that this conversation comes with a bit of a trigger warning. If any of you guys have been through abusive relationships and are easily triggered by similar kinds of stories, then I would say that this podcast is not the one for you. I would go back and listen to a different conversation. However, if you aren't easily triggered by those things, then I think Brit's story will really, really show you what can come after the darkest times in life and how you can really rise above and choose your freedom above all else. We talk about, as I say, a few hardships that Brit had to face, how she scaled her photography business not once but twice, a business that she ran before that she actually sold, her journey into creativity. We also talk about her opinion on delegation and how she kind of cultivates this CEO mindset from the get-go, from the day she started her business, which is so inspiring and something I really want you guys to listen up for. And so much more, as always. So as always, do let me know how you found this episode. It was honestly one of my favorites to listen back to. It was so inspiring, so energizing. And I say, Brit has some major wisdom to drop. So I hope you listen up and let's get into it. Brit Nicole, a massive warm welcome to Maverick Mind. Brittany, welcome to Maverick Mind. I'm so excited to have you here and I'm so happy to bring you onto the show and to introduce you to everyone. I'm so intrigued to see where this conversation goes, and I'm sure everyone will get so much insight from you. I'm really happy to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So I'd love to know, because your journey's kind of had so many involvements, so many ups and downs and iterations. I'd really love to, I guess, go into your background and kind of, did you always know that you wanted to be a photographer, or was that something that you found later?
Not really with photography. So when I was a child, like my dad owned his own business. So I knew from being younger, like I want to do what my dad is doing. I want to make all the connections that he's making. I want to make the type of money that he's making, all these things. And I quickly learned school is not for me. Like, get me in, get me out. My senior year, I kid you not, I walked into English class and our teacher put Beowulf down right in front of me and he goes, "This is what we're going to study." Immediately after that class ended, I went straight to the principal's office and I said, "You need to put me in the self-paced program because Beowulf is not going to serve me when I'm in my 20s or 30s." And so that's what we did. And I ended up having my senior year last for less than a month. I was done, I was out, and I was like, you know what? I truly don't want to waste my time trying to figure out who I am throughout the school system because, like, here in America, the way that we were raised is if you go to school, you're going to be successful. If you do XYZ, you're going to be successful. And I just have never, I mentally can't follow that type of rule set. And um, I if my daughter ever did this, I don't know how I would feel, to be honest with you now, since I'm a mom. But I graduated at high school at 17. I was very young. I ended up moving 8 hours away to Dallas, Texas, in with a family that I've never met before. And I started interning underneath him because I knew that I was creative. I had loved taking photos beforehand. I loved drawing. I loved painting, anything about it. But I wanted to learn more about photography itself. But I'm not the type of person, again, to go to school for that. So I'm living with this family that I'd never met. And our trade is I will be their nanny. Whoa, my voice just cracked. I will be their nanny throughout the day. And at night, he's going to take me to his weddings, teach me all the ins and outs of the business side and things like that. So that's really where everything started. I refuse to just walk along the system because it's not who I am.
Yeah, wow. I think so many people will resonate because I think a lot of creative types don't really fit into the school system. Um, we kind of, or maybe it's not really how we learn. I don't think a lot of us are quite kind of kinesthetic learners. We learn by doing stuff, we learn by playing, we learn by making mistakes sometimes. And yeah, squeezing into that box is a real challenge for a lot of us. So it was a really brave thing for you to do to say or have that intuition that's like, this really doesn't sit right with me. This is not me at all. And then to just forge your own path, that's really bold at 17. How did you find that internship? Was it just like a family friend or is it just a random meeting?
Oh, so this was back in 2005, 2004, 2005. And, Google was just starting to be around. Facebook was still just for college people at this time. So I used my friend's college ID to look up like if there was any like professors or whatever that I could learn from, and I found a few. But I was like, you know what? I don't want somebody who's just going to textbook me. Like you were saying, we have to. A lot of us we learn completely different ways, and I just got on Google and I Googled the best wedding photographers and I reached out to about 10 and I felt most comfortable with this one that was 8 hours away in Dallas and went, had dinner with him and his family, and then decided, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. So I did it.
Wow, again, that's so, so brave. That's, yeah, incredible. But after that, so kind of you were interning for how long?
Girl, it was like only a year. I could not hang. I really missed my home. I missed my friends and I took what I learned, right? And I was just like I really want to be home and take what I've learned here and practice it there. And I know that he's going to be around if I have any additional questions or help or whatever. And so that's what I did. I followed my heart back home because that's where I wanted to be. I knew this is where I'm going to be planting my family. So I did. I just packed up one day and I was like, okay, bye. Thanks.
And then did you start your business like then and there when you got home?
I did, yes. I will never forget this moment, but I was sitting in my apartment and I had those really old first MacBooks that take like 5 years to load anything. And I was Googling how to make a DBA. And so, like, I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. So I had to first make sure that Brit Nicole wasn't taken, and it wasn't. So I went and bought all the Brit Nicole domains. And then I was like, well, how the crap do I connect it to? It was a struggle. So I had to really learn a lot from there. But the moment that I got home, it was just hitting the ground running. I'm not the type of person that sits and waits for things to happen. I have the mindset of I literally had the opportunity to forge my own path and make life the way that I want it to be. And it's definitely not going to be by sitting on my butt and waiting for people to come to me. So I did a crap ton of footwork. I did a ton of meetings. I did a lot of stuff that a lot of people would think that it's just time wasted, but in this process, when you're first starting out, you're all about connecting with relationships, and nobody's going to purchase from you unless they know who you are and why you are valuable. And so I just,
Absolutely. Yeah. But I think that this is a stage within a creative, if a creative person wants to create a business, or if they want to put themselves out there as like a singer and create a fan base or something, this is the point where a lot of people do wait, and they do kind of, I call it like wait to be like anointed, like someone else give them permission to do what they want to do. And or they get stuck with all of the self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, the I'm not good enough, or I'm not good enough yet, that the kind of like my vision is better than what I create now, so I can't share it yet because it's not there yet. And then that just is an endless cycle that never ends. uh, do you think that what gave you that like chutzpah to do that? Do you think it's your dad being an entrepreneur, or do you think you just had it in you?
you know what? It was honestly my mom. Um, she, she's never really gone out and experienced life. Um, they're raised in a different generation, right? It's a safe generation. It is don't do things outside of the norm type generation. And I there was a lot of negativity that surrounded anything that was big and out there, or if I wanted to move or do XYZ, right? And um, one thing that I will always remember, and it took me a while to heal from this actually, was I was in high school, and being a creative, we like theater, we like doing certain things, you know? And so I auditioned for this Disney movie, and I ended up getting a call back. And I remember being home and listening to the voice recording of them giving me directions of what to do next and whatnot. Now, mind you, I'm still in school, like I'm young, I'm a minor. And my dad, he starts crying, and he's crying because he's excited. he he's like he's already starting to think about things like I'll have somebody run the shop, we'll go down to Orlando, like I will homeschool you, we'll do XYZ, like we're going to figure this out. And I'm like, yeah, like that feels good. And then my mom starts crying, and my heart just sank because I was like, oh, I know what's about to happen next. And it was just a lot of negativity around it. She was afraid of all of these certain things that were going to happen to me. And it, instead of following where I wanted to be in life, because I truly wanted to be an actress, like deep down in my core, I let it go so that my mom felt safe. And I regretted that for the longest time, for years. Like I'm closer to 40 than I am, my beginning 30s and stuff. And it took me years to heal from that, of just walking away and allowing somebody else to dictate how my life is going to go and the passions that I have. And from that moment, I had to train myself to turn off that switch of what anybody else has to say, because just because they're afraid to do something doesn't mean that I can't. And so that's really how I started navigating my whole entire life from that point.
Yeah, wow, that is like really huge. And I think that that comes for a lot of us in loads of different iterations. I think that following a creative path is scary for most people because it comes with a hell of a lot of unknowns.
Yes.
And I think there's been a narrative in society for a really long time, if not forever, that it's going to be hard, there'll be struggles, that, X amount of businesses fail within the first year, how many artists are going to make it into galleries, how many artists, musicians are going to make it on stage. It's so small, and it's really easy for creatives of all kinds to take on that narrative, to really hold those beliefs and believe them as ours. But there is like a really powerful switch, and I think we have to do it if we're going to carve our own path, to say, actually, wait a minute, that's your belief, not mine.
Yes.
And like that is a like really empowering moment when you realize that, and that switch starts to happen. But for you to kind of really kind of almost see it happen, I suppose, at the time. I mean, it might took you years later to heal from it, yeah, but like to really have that, like your dad was so excited, but your mom was so scared, to have those things right in front of you. That's such a powerful moment, I guess. But I guess also something that you've now learned and alchemized from, that you can guide other people through.
100%. And even though that we know in our heads, like whenever we get to those spots, life happens again, you know, and then you have to readjust from those things that happen in life. And it's not always one of those things where my mindset has always been, I'm going to power through. I'm literally going to blaze my trail, and I don't give a crap who is in front of me. You're not going to stop this. Well, things do happen in life to where it does stop you. And then you're just like, holy crap, who am I? Because my identity was so wrapped up into who I was, my accolades, and what I was doing. You have to relearn that whole process all over again in different stages of your life. So, for people who might not find themselves in that place yet, doesn't mean you find that for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And it can come from so many iterations. I think that as creatives, we can get stuck within our identity of creator, like your identity or your persona, in terms of like the kind of artist you are, the kind of musician that you are, the kind of business that you're creating. With my first business, I totally did that. I was so tied up with the identity of that. And then you get to a point of like, hang on, who am I outside of that? But you can also get it outside in your personal life through, relationships, experiences, people that you surround yourself with. We have to be really careful what we take on, because we are creators are like sponges. We take on everything. We're very sensitive human beings. I mean, like, is there another experience that you've had, like within your work or outside of that, you really met that hurdle once again?
Girl, I got two major ones. Get your copy. It's a story time. So, being in Texas, we, I don't know if it's like this every other place, but being the generation that I was raised in, you go to school, you get married, you have kids. Like, if you don't do these things in these orders, you are then not successful. Like, you are not a woman, you are not whatever, put whatever you want in that box. And I was in my younger 20s when I started dating this guy. And I thought, like, okay, I know that he comes across brash or whatever. I was justifying literally everything about this guy. In my heart, I knew that I knew he isn't the one for me. But I was trying to force it because I thought that was the next step I was supposed to do in my life. And it actually ended up very horrific. Um, the marriage became super abusive, and I had never been put in situations like that before. I remember this one night. I'm the type of person like 9:30 p.m. comes around, I'm to bed. Like I cannot stay up. I can't function. I need sleep. Whatever. And in that household, 10 p.m. is whenever he wanted to have dinner. So it was really difficult for me to, I guess, position myself within this new life. It was very, very hard. And one night I didn't want to do dishes at 11 p.m. afterwards, and he lost his mind. And I remember running out the door, and it was snowing and barefoot and everything. And I went and knocked on the neighbor's door for me to just go outside and just chill out, knowing what I know now. Like, obviously, I should have done something different about that. But again, I'm hiding all of these bad stuff from my friends and family because I'm trying to justify, like, I can change him. I could change XYZ. And during this time, I wasn't allowed to have my own business. So anytime that I would go out on photo shoots, he would have to come with me. He would have to approve who I take on as a client, and any of the money that I made had to go into his account. So what he was eventually doing was bottlenecking me to where I'm only dependent upon him and no one else. Again, being younger, not really thinking of this isn't normal, but again, you're trying to talk yourself into like it's fine, it's fine. But no one was allowed to come over to the house. Like my parents weren't even allowed to come into the house. My brother, for some odd reason, was the only one that he allowed to come into the house. And I'm a very let's play games, let's have fun, let's do XYZ. And then couldn't even access the garage. Like the garage was locked. I remember he had a dog in there that I've never saw. It was a crazy time in my life, girl. And one night, shit hit the fan, and he he didn't like the fact again that I wasn't doing dishes at 11 p.m. and he actually threw me up against the wall and started choking me. And I'm a Christian, and so I remember him like yelling at me like, "Where is your God now?" And I was like, "Okay, well, this sucks that I put myself in this position." I waited for him to pass out that night, and um, I grabbed my husky, which is I had her when she was like 6 weeks old. I loved that girl. But anyways, grabbed my husky and I left. And my friends had to, oh, girl, I'm so thankful for the friends and family that I had because they knew that wasn't right, but they knew that I wasn't going to be in there forever. So no one abandoned me. Thank God, no one abandoned me during this. And whenever I left, my friends and family had to buy my groceries. Like I literally had no money at all because I was so dependent upon what he brought to the table. And so throughout that time, um, I again, it was one of those other internal promises of I'm never going to allow somebody to take away the way that they did. It's never going to happen again. So I did boots on the ground. I put my tunnel vision on. I first dove into my healing journey first because I knew if I kept this inside of me and I don't try to heal from it, I'm never going to be able to be the successful entrepreneur that I want to be. I I just won't be able to. So I dove into healing first, and alongside that came building my business back up again. And within 4 months, I was able to generate $20,000, which was a lot to me at the time. And I was like, you know what? Like, I actually can do this. My past of what happened to me, of how horrific it was, he actually ended up killing himself. So it was a really, really
Wow.
bad. Um, but I had to readjust my mindset of, yes, this happened. I'm acknowledging it. That doesn't mean that that's who I am. That doesn't mean that that's what my future is. Just because I went through this really crappy situation doesn't mean that I have to continue going down crappy situations. So I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that is well, story number one. That's very like wow. I mean, for anyone, I think that yeah, for anybody in general, but for a creator to have your expression blocked like that,
Best.
because when creatives I've witnessed on my through my work, I'm sure you've witnessed it the same, that when a creative cannot express, it depress. it it becomes like massive anxiety or depression a lot of the time, which I think is why we are so susceptible to both those things. But to have like this outside person that's like literally putting the fence up around you to block that expression, not allowing you to be yourself, or even in moments where you are yourself, where you're doing the photography, you have to give him the money. Like when you left, it wasn't that you didn't have money. It wasn't just that it wasn't in your account, which is wild. But I think, again, to have that moment of like, this does not define me. Because we can, everyone, but we can get so caught up in our past being our future and that our narrative that we've lived so far being the defining factor of how we're going to live now. But to have that kind of anchoring moment of like, actually, wait a minute, like that's not who I am or who I want to be, and I'm going to continue to create myself moving forward and to create like quite a wildly different reality for myself. Like that's huge. That's huge. Like props to you. Massive respect.
So yeah, from that, I had these promises again, going back to I'm a Christian. I feel these promises that are within me that God is going to give me tenfold what was taken away from me, that was out of my control. And I wholeheartedly just chased after that. And my heart knew that if I stayed true to who I was, if I stayed true to the path where I felt peace going, where I wasn't forcing things, that was well, I'll say that. The story number two, you're going to be like, Brittany, you did the same thing. But forcing something to happen when it's not supposed to is a very big, real indicator that a lot of people just don't listen to their guts, And during that time in my life, I was like, I'm not going to do that again. Well,
Yeah.
a different time. So I eventually met my husband, and we have two beautiful little kids. And this dude is like, he is my best friend. He is everything that I've ever wanted in my whole entire life. He is just incredible. So at least I got that part right. During this time, I really just exploded. I was like, okay, I want to be able to recreate the 20,000 that I made within the 4 months. And how can I keep redoing and redoing and redoing? I don't even know what the crap I'm doing. Like, I feel like a lot of people, we get into business, actually, even business owners right now, nobody knows what they're doing until they do it. Just putting that out there. Nobody knows what the heck they're doing. Okay.
No, they don't.
So, so I was like, you know what, photography, you can't make money from it. So I built this digital media business. And where I live, there was no digital advertising whatsoever during this time. Again, it was back in like the you know, 2000s and stuff. And I was like, okay, there's a need. I can fix it. I don't know how to fix it. I don't really know what the crap to do, but I'm going to try. So I went to my dad and I said, hey, will you allow me to get this loan? And let's see what I can do with this digital media thing. And he did. He co-signed for me, not just fully believing that I can do something. And I took off to New York and I found a digital agency company that knew a crap ton about digital. And I learned from them for about 2 weeks. And then I came back home and I built it. And I was like, you know what? I really hate the sales part. I despised it. I hated meeting up with people. What I honestly hated the most was making appointments with men and I noticed that when I wore makeup, I made a sale. When I didn't wear makeup, it was a harder sale for them to take me seriously. Oh, I don't have it in me to do this. Like I can't deal. So I hired a male to go off and do this. I was like, if this is one of those problems, why not just nip it where it's at? Get a male. I don't care if people think it's his business. Doesn't matter to me. I'm the one making the money. So he did. He went out and he did sales, and then I had enough to hire another one, and same exact thing happened. So I was able to scale this thing, but I was waking up every freaking day just hating it because it didn't allow me to be creative. It's not where I was supposed to be. It wasn't my calling. So I sold it in my younger 20s, built it, scaled it, sold it. And I was like, you know what? Photography is in the back of my head. I'm just going to apply the blueprint that I did for this over to photography. And that's exactly what I did. I started scaling it all over again. There is money to be made. You just have to know how to do the business side of things instead of just the creative passion part of it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, wow, for scaling a company that you weren't even that passionate about, that's quite hard for a lot of us, I think. So I witnessed so many, especially like creative types. We have to like be really, really emotionally into what we're doing. Otherwise, we're just so unbothered by by what it is. But I guess it's also, I guess, the freedom to create something must have been like a bit of a driving force. But again, as you said, I think a lot of us get caught in the early stages of wanting to do the thing, wanting to put our work out there in whatever capacity that might be, business or just creating a fan base. We get caught in this idea of like, well, I don't know how to do it, or that's not my forte, so maybe I don't do that bit, maybe I just don't do it. And like, I think it's this kind of like shoulder racking moment within so many of the most talented, like unbelievably talented people on this earth. All you have to do is learn it. And by the way, as you said, I've never met an entrepreneur that knows what the hell they're doing. We're making it up as we go along. We're learning and we're growing from our mistakes. You just put it out there and you grow from feedback, really.
100%. Yes. So, do I have a lot of accolades and awards in photography now? Yes. It wasn't like that whenever I first started off. I learned the importance of delegation and automation from the digital media company. And, you know, a lot of people don't know this, which they're about to now. In the very early stages of when I started to scale my photography business and actually making money from the weddings and stuff, after you're doing the cost of doing business and whatnot, not just throwing numbers out there of what people are going to buy, but I actually didn't have the correct equipment for the wedding parts that I wanted to shoot. And it's because I didn't have the money for it. And what I ended up doing was I started marketing myself with using like ring shots. There wasn't really any photos of people. It was just like detailed shots of invitations, flowers, rings, shoes, like all of these things. And my very first wedding, I got hired on like for Brit Nicole myself was $2,000. Well, I took that money and I went and bought the lens and body that I absolutely knew that I wanted to have. And then the rest of it, I went and hired a second shooter who had more experience than me, who had incredible talents, but didn't have the confidence to really run their own business. And I brought her along with me. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get incredible images from you because I don't know anything about this realm yet, but I know I'm going to learn from you. But you don't know that. You don't know any of these reasons why I'm bringing you along. And I didn't make any money for myself off of that. I reinvested it into, and I was able to create really beautiful images from that wedding. And it just kept going and going and going that way until I was able to be like, all right, I got this. I'm good at these things. And I can do this.
Yeah. Wow. That's the thing. I think entrepreneurs or people trying to do the hard thing, put their work out into the world, you do not need to know everything. However, you do need to be resourceful. And that is like really the key of that. That's like such a great showing of resourcefulness because it's kind of putting your ego aside of like, I have this vision, I know I want to do this. However, I can't do it exactly the way that I want to do it right now. So I'm going to do piece this puzzle in a different way. And then we'll keep rolling from there. And yeah, that's amazing. It's so inspiring.
One of the biggest lies that is very, very hard to instill into people who want to own their own business, especially creative business, is you don't have to do the hard work first. You don't have to do the hustling. It's not impressive to be hustling 24/7. There's there's nothing impressive about being a part of a hustle culture. What's impressive is being able to delegate and utilize and knowing what your weaknesses are, getting someone else to take over those weaknesses where it is their strengths, and then you continue on with your strengths and actually putting the brain power and everything else into building your business and what actually makes the moves versus just being stuck in your thinking of I have to be the one that controls XYZ. Because if you do that to yourself, you didn't create a business. What you did is you ended up creating a job for yourself that you're stuck working at instead of the business working for you.
Yeah, for sure. And I think so many, well, we go down this path really with the end goal of freedom. We don't want to work for the man. We don't want to like have to have a quote unquote real job. We have to wear a gray suit. We want to live life on our own terms. We want to be able to create whenever we want to create. We want to be able to like manifest really the life that we really want. But a lot of us get stuck in that trap, especially in the early stages of like, now I have a business, so I'm just going to give myself a 9 to 5. And you forget that, hang on, wait a second, I am my own boss. And I am actually the visionary behind this business. So I don't have to do everything. I absolutely do not have to do everything.
It is very, very important for somebody who wants to actually build a business to where it retires you or just even enough to make money where you do have freedom to know where your mindset is at. If you are in the mindset of manager mode, you're always going to get manager pay. If you're in the mindset of putting a manager into your business, great, do that because then now you have a business that you're running. You are now the CEO, and there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't be getting paid CEO projects.
Totally. And I think, yeah, I think a lot of us have like the vision of that life, of being that person, but then there's this disbelief that we can actually make it happen. And there's so many ways now that you can delegate little tasks that you just really don't want to do to people that will do it for not very much money. We think if you hire someone, it's going to be this like huge expense. Right. For example, I'll give the example of my coach. She hires somebody just to put the intro and outro on her podcast, and it costs like $5, but she doesn't have to do it herself. You could do it, it wouldn't take very long, but she doesn't have to do it. And it's not like hiring a whole employee, it's just getting somebody off Fiverr or something to do something small that you don't really want to do. And it's getting yourself again in that mindset of delegation, even if it's something just very, very small.
And a part of the problem, I feel like, for people who can't wrap their brains around delegating, especially in the early stages, is the biggest mind block that they come across is I don't have the money to hire someone. Well, you don't have the money to put out to hire someone. You're never going to have the money or the freedom that you want. So, what you should do is find someone who is going to give you an ROI, a return on the investment, bring them in where they can push through on the weaknesses or the things that you don't want to do, and they actually turn a profit and pay for themselves. And a lot of people don't understand that, like, that is possible. That's what's supposed to happen is this person's literally supposed to be paying for themselves while you keep scaling.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to say, like, a note for anyone listening that's like, but I actually have not got a dime to my name. I cannot do anything, but I have this vision in my life of what I want to create. Like when I had my first business, I used to own a fashion business and I didn't have a lot of money like that was knocking around. However, I had a lot of friends that were creative people. And I lived in a part of London at the time that was full of creative types. And a story for anyone that's really in that place, I actually once met a photographer on Tinder. And I had one date with him, like nothing happened that's like Tinder is known for, etc. But I did a trade with him. I taught him a yoga class because I'm a yoga teacher. He took pictures for me. So
Yes,
it's
I'm
just
all
like
about it,
you
man.
just
All
got to
about it.
find it, make it work somehow, and I'm sure if you're listening to this, you'll have hundreds of creative friends that will be able to help you in some way, whether that's
Yes.
creating content because you don't like creating content, or helping you somehow. There's so many ways to get yourself out there and to help yourself tap into the freedom that you want in the future. Tap into it now in some
Absolutely,
small fragment if you can.
completely agree with that. I'm all about it.
Absolutely. But I think like kind of backtracking a little bit to something you said earlier in the art that kind of your past does not define your future kind of thing. When we have that big vision for ourselves, sometimes we do have that voice in our head that's like, wait, but that you were the person that did this, or you were the person that this happened to. So maybe you're not worthy of that future, or maybe you shouldn't even channel or share that part of yourself through your work with your audience because you have shame around it, because you think that the kind of that people won't accept you for something that you've been through, or by sharing that even a fragment of that experience through your artwork, through your music, or through the business that you're creating, through the products that you create. I just wondered if you had some words to speak on that, or to those people that maybe like do feel a bit tied up in the unworthiness because of something that they went through.
It happens. It happens. There was so much guilt and shame that I was carrying for getting a divorce. Like I wasn't married for like what, 4 months? And that's embarrassing, to like admit that it was my choice to do XYZ. I knew coming into it, it wasn't the best thing, but I did it anyways. And now everyone gets to see the dirty laundry that came from it. And it was extremely embarrassing and hard to carry. And I think what helped me and what saved me was my own healing journey of finding out who I am, not who anyone else says that I am, not what anybody else may think that I am, because we tend to jump to conclusions of, well, she didn't say hi to me, so she doesn't like me, or put other thoughts onto people that's not realistic. And in order for me to heal from all of that stuff that I was carrying of not feeling worthy, like he literally stripped me down to nothing. I I was beat down to nothing. I didn't know who I was or who anything. Like it was just a state of confusion the whole entire time and a state of embarrassment the whole time. I was like, that doesn't settle right with me. Like that's not who I'm meant to be. How can I get to the person that I was? Because it did strip me nothing. So I would just encourage anybody who might be feeling this way to reach out to there's nothing wrong with going to therapists. There's nothing wrong with doing counseling. I do EMDR, which has been amazing for me. Um, you
I
need
actually
to
had an EMDR therapist on the podcast a few weeks ago.
really.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I do EMDR and it's incredible. And I fully believe that in order for us to move forward to change our thought process of all of those negative, bad feelings that we keep telling ourselves over and over, we have to let that part of ourselves die off. And it's just like pulling the weeds out of a garden. And you have to put in the work of, shoveling, getting that dirt out after you pull the weeds out, make sure all those roots are gone, and we're putting in new seeds. Like this isn't something that happens overnight. And my confidence didn't come back until way later. It wasn't one of those things that was like, oh, bam, I left, I should be good. It was nothing even remotely close to that. And we all are very hard on ourselves. We can't count on others' validation for how we go about our lives. We have to be okay and love who we are so that we can actually step into our calling.
Absolutely. Do you think some healing came from kind of like putting that message now into the work you're doing now, both as a photographer, but also outside of that, what your work with coaching and things? Do you think there's some healing that comes from the empowerment of kind of channeling that message through your work?
Like healing for myself.
Yeah.
Um, it did, but I'm now to the point where like I don't have any emotions connected to it. Like there was a period of time, like even the second big thing that really happened to me that we haven't got into yet. Um, that second big thing, there's times where I will still cry about it because I am not healed. Like even just the thoughts of it, I'm just like, oh, oh, that's heavy, that's hard. I don't want to relive it. But with what happened to me then, I I've talked about it enough. I've healed about it. I know who I am from that, and I'm okay now. So the healing journey took time, but
Yeah, it always does take time. And I think there are some things that, yeah, just a lifelong process. And yeah, some things are more raw than others, and some things we can kind of step away from and let go of quite easily. Do you want to go into the second thing if you're open to talking about it?
so I had scaled, and there was this switch in my head of Brittany, you don't like shooting large weddings. Why the crap are you doing it? Like, I truly despise like 300, 200 people guest lists. Like, it's just not my thing. The experience that people have with me mean more than anything else. And I remember talking with one of my brides afterwards, like, what was your most favorite part about your wedding? And she didn't actually answer. She went on to tell me things that she regretted doing, such as she didn't have time to actually sit down and eat her dinner that she paid $5,000 for everybody else to eat. She didn't have time to sit and talk with her grandparents because you had an agenda and a time schedule and boom, 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 things that you had to keep doing. And I was like, you know what? Like, I hate that for you. So I wanted to create an experience for people where they don't have to go through that. Like they can truly be who they are to their core and experience the type of wedding day that they want to experience without playing a hostess. So I live in the top of Texas, which we have the second largest canyon in the United States in my backyard. It's like, you know what? I bet I can find me some adventure couples that want to trade in their high heels for hiking boots. The ones that don't want to do church weddings, venue weddings, barn weddings. That's a huge thing. Um, let's just get married outside. What if I'm the one to marry them? So I went and I got ordained, and I things just started falling into place. Like I started getting adventure couples to where they were flying in to have their wedding day out in a canyon. They're hiking. We're doing beautiful sunrises, sunsets, all of the thing, and that just kind of snowballed into doing a lot of destination weddings, going to Barbados, going to all of Iceland, all of these other locations, and I'm getting older, right? I'm married. I now have a baby. I want to be present. I don't want my child to grow up thinking that my job is more important than them, thinking that my phone, my computer, my camera, anything with a screen is more important than them. I don't want that to be their childhood memory. So I started putting the blueprint of what I did with the digital media business into my photography. And I opened up something called Texas Adventure Elopements, which was a branch underneath Brit Nicole. Brit Nicole still did the destination stuff, like overseas and stuff like that. But obviously, Texas Adventure Elopement stayed within Texas. So I ended up hiring other photographers that didn't want to run their own business, but they wanted a creative outlet. They wanted to go on and do these adventure stuff. And this was me again, not listening to my gut, but the very first person that I hired should not have been the first person I hired. It was the first person that just showed interest, right? Like, I was excited that she was excited. And instead of taking the time to really interview other people or getting to know, or even just waiting for the right person to come along, I was impatient. I didn't want to wait. Like, I had all of these weddings coming up, and I was like, I don't want to go shoot them. Like, I'm tired, you know? So I did. I ended up hiring her. And one of the things that I should have really listened to is my surrounding. First of all, my husband and my friends telling me, like, you need to let her go, because I was putting more time and effort of putting out dumpster fires than I was putting back into my business, scaling it, moving it forward, doing XYZ. I was just putting out these mistakes, fixing them. All of my time and effort went to that. And one thing that I really liked about her was that she had never shot a wedding or elopement before. Like, I can train you. Like, because I have a brand. Like, people know who I am, and we have to keep to this brand. So I can literally train you to shoot just like me. I really loved that thought. But once I started figuring out, like, well, crap, now I'm having to put out these dumpster fires. Like, it's not just the inexperience of not shooting a wedding, the inexperience of literally everything that came along with it. So I hired another girl. So I'm starting to build a team now. The other girls, I'm like, oh my gosh, you make life so much easier. Like, you know how to shoot, you know how to do all these things. Like, this is what it's supposed to feel like. Again, you're paying for yourself. And it was incredible. It was amazing. So I opened up a Pacific Northwest one and did the same exact thing for Pacific Northwest and Alaska type of elopements. And still during this time, the very first hire was just, oh my gosh, we're a year into it. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I can't. If you ever have hired somebody, there is never a good time to let someone go, ever. Like, it is painful for you, it's painful for them. It's not fun for anyone. No matter, even if you're the one being let go, I promise you, your boss isn't sitting there like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. Like, is it a relief? Sure. But it's painful for us to have to go through that. Anyways, whenever you leave, like, we go over, it's kind of like an exit interview type thing, but we're also going over the contracts, stipulations. What can you do? What can't you do? What did the contracts say that you signed? You have an NDA, you have your non-competition, then you have your employment agreement, right? We're going through all of that. And the very first indicator that I had of this was going to be a long haul, she started crying over the interview of, I didn't realize you were going to hold me accountable to that. Woo, girlfriend, of course I'm going to hold you accountable. This is my baby that I built, you know, like, of course I'm going to. And what ended up happening was, you know, I got blocked from all socials, naturally, right? But my employees did not get blocked from all socials. One of them did, but not all of them. And what we found out was she went against her non-competition and also like her employment agreement and started doing the exact same thing I was doing in my own territories. Oh, I need to figure out more about this. So we put in an inquiry, and sure enough, like, she was using all of my templates that I had made for any type of client correspondence, consultation templates, everything that I had built for myself, on top of federally copyrighted images that did not belong to her. So I sent her a cease and desist. They ignored it. So I sent her another one for a separate thing. Ignored that. I'm like, dang it, this is gonna suck. This is gonna be a doozy kind of thing. And exactly what I feared happened. I started seeing her popping up in my market using my own material that I spent 16 years worth of building up. Um, so far from what we saw, like, of course, there's going to be more, but 66 federally copyrighted infringement images that she was using that were not hers. And booking people in my GPS coordinate locations where I took time to camp out at these spots to figure out what's best for sunrise, what's best for sunset, all of these locations. So it's literally like she just stole everything that I worked so hard for. And I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. I can just take it for myself. And, you know, if Brittany could do it, I can just take it and do it. So I had to federally sue her. And in order to afford a federal lawsuit, which, by the way, I did not realize how expensive that is, I had to let go every single one of my employees. So I no longer had Texas Adventure locals. I no longer had my Pacific Northwest or my Alaska stuff. I was still producing from Brit Nicole itself, but it's me writing solo. Like, there's no delegation happening because I could not afford that. All of my money went straight into the federal court system. And oh, mm, mm, this this has been the hardest healing journey of my life. And what I learned from my therapist, and maybe you learned this from interviewing the EMDR, but I didn't know that betrayal is the number one trauma that is so hard for people to truly heal from. And that's what I went through was the trauma of betrayal. You know, I trusted you to come along into my business that I built and created myself. And this business is supposed to sustain my family, my children, to be able to go to the school that we want them to go to be able to do XYZ. And all of that was taken away. And not only did it come close to bankrupting my business, it dipped its toes into my personal life to where we had to actually remove our children from their private school that they were going to, that they didn't know anything else. They all of their friends were there, all the people that we loved were there. We had to we had to literally readjust our actual lives around stolen property. And it was horrific. We went through mediation. Mediation lasted hours, more than 8 hours for this simple thing. More than 8 hours in mediation. Didn't get anywhere because what we learned is that she had sold off a lot of her assets and stuff before mediation came around. Okay. All right. This is the type of battle that I'm walking into. And during that process, as you know, I'm not a person that's just going to lay down and let you beat me, especially if my children are involved. So I reached out to a few news outlets because I had those connections because I've been featured before. And I told them, like, hey, this is what I'm going through. And I just want you to be aware of how hard it is for a small business in America to actually protect themselves when you do have contracts, because contracts don't mean crap, apparently. I should not have to fight this hard to protect myself. And it exploded. It went everywhere. I was put on Fox News, I was put on CBS, CNN, Yahoo Finance. And that led me to being invited to sit in front of the House Administration at the round table in Washington, D.C., to tell them my story and basically just how horrible their dinosaur laws are of not protecting small businesses the way that they should be protected in such a digital age. So everyone keeps telling me, like, oh, things happen and you learn from it, you grow from it. It happens for a reason or whatnot. And I'm just like, even still to this day, like, was it cool getting featured in some of the places? Sure, it was cool getting my story out. Being invited to something amazing and life changing of possibly helping pass a bill where small businesses don't get hurt the way that I did. Like, that's crazy cool. But it is so embeddedly deep traumatic for me of like, I made the choice to hire her. I made the choice to sue her. Had I not sued her, what would that life look like for me now? Like, would we still been able to keep the money that I had? would my children still be in private school? Like, what would this look like for us? Would we struggle the way that we were struggling? So there's a lot of what ifs and healing that are coming from it. But I mean, this happened, we're going on actually a year from it being completely done, and it's still not completely done within me. It's
Wow,
very,
no, I can imagine, no, because there's so many layers to that, like to go into, and as you say, betrayal is like something that is so hard to get over. Whether you do or not, I don't actually know. um, but to navigate, maybe that's a better word to use. But yeah, there's so many layers to that, so I can imagine that that is a process for sure. But I would love to know maybe what's the fire that keeps you going, like through those really hard times. Because I don't want to sugarcoat it to anyone that's listening to this. Like if you needed to reassure, if you needed a real affirmation that building a freedom-based business and following your creative truth, bringing your vision to life is not going to be rainbows and sunshine. It's not like the day that you decide to actually get it off your butt and do it. It's not like then that day life just immediately gets amazing. Sometimes things happen and it's like out of your control, or things happen maybe that could have been different. Maybe you could have handled something differently, that we have to learn from and we have to accept. And again, as we said earlier, not allow it to define our future. So I'd love to know, like, what kind of kept you going? Was it like just wanting to have a different story, or is it?
no, honestly. So what I learned and figured out is anger is what I have been thriving off of for years. The the anger of trying to prove someone wrong, going all the way back to my mom in that story, right? The anger drove me to just forge my own freaking path. The thing that happened with my ex-husband, I was angry that I allowed someone to take away what they took away from me, because I have that choice of who does whatever is done to me. I have that choice, right? And anger has taken me very, very far. So anger got me through this part. But the one thing that nobody really talks about is when you actually start healing from things and you're no longer angry, who are you? And that was me. Like, oh, my identity was so wrapped up in who Brit Nicole was, what my accolades were, how much money I was making, all of these features and what have you. My identity was so wrapped up in that because I had a point to prove. And now that I don't, who am I? Where do I go from here? And it is a journey still to this day of really accepting who I am at my core and living in peace without having to worry, yeah, I guess worry about um, having those attachments with me, because they were apparently security blankets. Because if I'm running on anger, I'm taking that with me. Like, you're the reason why I'm doing this. You're the reason why I feel this way. But once I let that go, I have nothing else to blame and I have no one else to blame. What the heck do I do? Well, I dig back into, where is that fire? Where did it go? Like, I knew you were there when I was a little girl. You were there throughout this whole entire time, but that there was a lot of water that was poured on that deep burning desire within myself from other people. How can I get that fire back up for myself? And that is really diving into, who is Brittany? What does Brittany like to do? Who's Brittany without the accolades? Who is Brittany without the money? And I literally got knocked off of my horse, all of those things taken away. And it has been a journey trying to figure out, where do I go from here? But once I followed that fire again, and I'm walking in peace towards the things that I know that I'm called to do after all of this stuff has happened. I know that I'm called to empower other women to pursue their dreams, their passions, and make a whole entire financial legacy for themselves, all while knowing how to legally protect yourself along the way. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known how to do any of that.
No, again, I guess it's like one of those things that we don't really, or we think you'll never need. Like, are people are, trustworthy, or it's that as a creator, if it's like not the thing that we like doing, again, it's like not the admin stuff that we know or the businessy things that we know how to do or like to do. So we kind of, I've had so many of my friends, some not something similar, nothing like that's happened, but had something legal happen. They're like, oh damn, like I never thought I'd actually need that thing. But
And what's crazy is the United States is the only place where you have to submit and pay for your registered copyright of anything. It could be a song, it could be photos, video, whatever, a movie. You have to submit it before you can sue somebody for infringement. In every other country, it is just an automatically like, okay, this belongs to this business. You did wrong. Boom, done. We're the only country that you have to literally jump through hoops in order for you to protect yourself. And it is batshit crazy. It's
wow, that is wild. Wow. But even through like all of those like you've had like sky highs and like crashing lows, would you still say it's worth like going after your passion? It's still worth like living that life and pursuing creating that life for yourself?
our economy in the US isn't the best right now. And I know that there's a lot of creatives that are like, man, I'm struggling, or I don't know if I can continue doing this because photography is a luxury brand. Right now, people aren't paying for luxuries. What do I do? Do I go get a second job or whatever? And there's been a few times where, because I haven't mentally been able to get out of the mindset of the shit show that happened, of Brittany, you're just crap. You're not a good business person. You're not good at photography. You're not a good boss. Why does anybody care what you have to say or what you have to do? You're no longer who you were, and you're never going to be that person again. I've had to fight those every single day. And there was a moment in time where I was like, okay, I'm going to give into it. I'm not going to do this anymore. Like I can't keep taking these crushing blows the way that I'm taking them. And so I got online and I started searching for a job. And I kid you not, within the first 30 minutes, I was like, oh, I cannot imagine waking up to put in all of that time, effort, and energy for someone else's dream and get paid pennies of what I was getting paid for myself. And what has kept me going is knowing I survived moving from Dallas to Amarillo with nothing. I survived that marriage coming from nothing. I survived selling a business that I absolutely hated. I will survive this. Is it going to be hard right now? Absolutely. I know that I have the passion and the knowledge to keep going. And if I just keep doing things step by step by step, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be right back where I was, regardless of what the economy is.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's another thing, kind of going way back to talking about like your mum, but also talking about the narratives that we take on as creatives. I found it on my journey and witnessed within my clients and people that I know, like sometimes there'll be a narrative in the air around things like, I mean, yeah, it's like it is proven that the economy is not that great, but there will be a narrative in the air of like, oh, no one's buying
Yes,
houses at the moment, no one's buying luxury at the moment, like, and people are always spending money,
yep,
always. And I always find it's the luxury things that people actually want to spend money on because they want to feel, they'll save for it and they'll buy that because they want to feel good about themselves. They want that thing that they really, really desire. So sometimes you have to kind of take the narrative in the air with a bit of a pinch of salt because it's not always totally true. People will tell you that no one's buying houses anymore, and then the house next door will be sold in one day.
Exactly. Like I love that you're bringing that up because it is so true. It goes back to because you fear it doesn't mean that I have to experience that. Like you really have to be careful of who you're allowing to speak into your life, you know?
Yeah, what you're taking on. Wow. Britt, I think we could talk all day. I really do. Thank you so, so much for coming on to the show, for sharing such a powerful story. I think people will feel so inspired by that, and I hope really energized, and I hope empowered not to take on other people's narratives all the time and to keep pursuing your passion, keep following your vision. I really, really hope that everyone is. Should everyone want to come and find you, which I'm sure they will do, where can everyone find you?
My
What's the best
website,
place?
Nicole.com, which is BritNicole.com, or Instagram. It's ITS dot Brit dot Nicole. If you don't put the dot in there, it's not going to be me.
I'll of course put the links to everything in the show notes. And you were also saying before recording that you wanted to share a really, really special gift with everyone. So can you let us know about that?
Yes. So I love that our audiences are very, very similar, entrepreneurs and the love of getting them help and stuff like that. So I have a freebie for all of your listeners. They just need to go to the link that is down in the description box. And it is from passion to profit. It is how somebody can find that fire within themselves, how they're able to actually follow it into their calling and then get paid from it.
Awesome. Amazing. I'm sure so many people will jump into that and will find it so, so, so helpful. So thank you again so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Maverick Mind. I hope that you've loved it, and if you have, I would appreciate it so much if you would subscribe and write a 5-star review on wherever you're listening to this podcast from. If you'd like to keep the conversation going, I invite you to join me over on Instagram at maverickmindco or on my website maverickmind.elliefoden.com. And I'll see you in another podcast very, very soon.